Welcome into the I-80 Boys College Football Show. As always, I'm Christian Hunt, and that old geriatric-looking guy right there is...
That's me, Chris Vaca, the degenerate here from Nebraska. Christian, what did you think yesterday, man? There were some pretty good football games again. Wrapping up the regular season, man. I can't believe it's over.
I think I owe you a nice steak dinner, Chris, and you owe me frosted tips from this weekend. Yeah. I think that's about it's about what I know right now. Yeah. But no, I think it was, Chris, I guess looking at some of the games that was played over the last couple days, really, chaos almost wanted to ensue. I feel like a couple times chaos did ensue for some teams, but for the most part, I mean, relatively clean, right? Relatively clean for the top 10 going into. Conference championship weekend. Now, what happens at conference championship weekend? That's anybody's guess, right? And we'll touch on some scenarios probably today or tomorrow in the next couple shows. But what were your thoughts on it, Chris? You touched on it. You said you watched a lot of football this weekend.
Yeah, it was kind of totally opposite of last year, right? The last 2 weeks of the season last year was just pandemonium. Ranked teams getting beat all over the place. USC losing last year. Iowa getting beat by Nebraska, took them out of the Big Ten West, or out of the Big Ten conference title game. Not so much the case yesterday. Some really good football games, though, that came down to the wire. Overall, very good weekend of college football. It just kind of makes me sad, Christian. Like I said, the regular season's over. Some teams are done playing for the year. It's crazy how fast that goes by. So I'll kick it over to you here, though, Christian. We'll see where we're going to start. I'm assuming it's with your Bulldogs.
Man, them dogs, little. Ooh, it's kind of the way they were. They weren't barking as much as they normally were. Listen, it was a weird game yesterday, right? Georgia Tech came out and they didn't score on their first drive, but they did score first, and it looked like they were getting ready to go up. What was it, like 14-0? And then wait a minute, a touchdown or the turnover got called back. And Georgia scored and ended up, I think, pulling away from them. But Tech kept it close, man. I mean, they came back and they fought back and made it a one-possession game there late. And I got to say this, man. We've touched on it. Georgia's defense, in my opinion, they've regressed a little bit. The offense is still very serviceable. I think we're in a good spot offensively. Chris, we touched on something a little bit, and I don't want to start making excuses, obviously, just because it's my dogs and stuff like that. But you almost wonder if a lot of these teams are starting to kind of look ahead a little bit. I mean, you could even make the argument Auburn lost to New Mexico State because they were looking ahead at Bama. Alabama probably looked like dog shit yesterday too, and we'll touch on them a little bit, right?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I think Georgia looked like they took their foot off the pedal, especially the fourth quarter. They didn't even score. Tech put up 10. I will say something about Georgia Tech, though. Hats off. They're not a bad football team. They played inspired yesterday. I know this isn't a participation trophy award ceremony here, but I mean, they did look good. They did. It amazes me for a team that was in the ACC that they did go 6-6, which is great. They're bowl eligible, but they played yesterday like a team that had 8 or 9 wins, in my opinion. And I was actually more impressed with Georgia Tech probably at the end of the game than I was Georgia, because I know what Georgia is. You said it. I would agree with you. It kind of looks like they took their foot off the pedal. Georgia's obviously got a big game next week against Alabama.
The other side of it, too, Georgia rested, I think, 4 of its best offensive players in that game. Wanted to be healthy, I guess, going into the championship game. I respect that. Hats off to Brent Key. I mean, he's building a program out there at Georgia Tech, something that those rabid, crazy, nerdy guys that had a better GPA than I did in high school that attend the University of Georgia Tech, he's giving them something to believe in, man, and I gotta respect that. Hats off to Brent Key and everything they're doing over there. The game, Michigan, Ohio State. Chris, what were your thoughts on that one?
Good football game. It was overall great football game. Two teams with 2 really good defenses. Both could run the ball fairly well. Michigan, again, just a little bit too much. What's to say about Ryan Day? This is the 3rd year in a row he has lost to Michigan. I believe Ohio State is a good football team. I truly believe that. But I thought they were going to win this game at the end. One thing about Kyle McCord, definitely no CJ Stroud, which I think we knew. But he played better in the second half. But, man, you got to use Marvin Harrison more, man. These receivers, Fleming. I'm just a little bit disappointed because I guess when you look at this on paper, and I know games aren't played on paper, but Ohio State has probably more talent than Michigan does. I mean,
Yeah.
overall. And I just felt like they didn't throw the ball, force the ball, even a double coverage to Marvin Harrison. I don't have to get on here and tell you guys how good he is. Overall, great football game. I'll be honest with you. I'm not an Ohio State fan at all because of their fan base, but I was actually rooting for Ohio State yesterday, Christian. I really was.
Yeah.
I think it's just because of Michigan. Some of the crap that we took a couple weeks ago on a video from some of their fan base also has something to do with maybe the allegations and the cheating crap that's going on there. Good game. What do you think, Christian? I want to know your thoughts on the game here, and what do you think about Ryan Day's future?
I think that, listen, when Urban Meyer was there, and even before him, I mean, Ohio State was dominating this rivalry, since the turn of the 2000s. I mean, right? I mean, they just were dominating it. And here's the thing. I think maybe Michigan probably dominated it in the 90s, but here's the reality of it, Chris. The last 3-4 years now, Michigan has been I think Michigan's been the better coach team. Even ironically,
Agreed.
Without Harbaugh being on the sideline this week, they were still the better coach team. And you would think, okay, it was kind of a lose-lose situation for Ohio State because even if they beat them, yes, they're going to be in the playoffs. Yes, they do what they're supposed to do. But, they didn't beat them with Harbaugh in there. Well, we don't even get that now. He didn't even beat Harbaugh on this one. He beat, the coach that they trotted out there, which I think speaks to Harbaugh's ability to game plan throughout the week and get them ready, for the games. So hats off to Michigan. We'll say that. For Ryan Day, though, and to answer your question, he's 56-7, I believe, at Ohio State. And those 7 losses come at the most critical times of the season, right? We touch on it all the time. You look at certain coaches out there, like if they put Brian Hartline right now, installed him as the coach, could he go 56-7, over the next 5, 6, 7 years? Given the same talent. I mean, you could make the argument. I mean, it goes back to Justin Fields. It goes back to C.J. Stroud. You know what I mean? How many times did they have, the elite receivers that they've had come through there? They've had great running backs. They've had good offensive linemen. I mean, how many times have they almost wasted championship caliber teams, it feels like, and to get out coached, in the playoffs or to get out coached, in this game here. And it gets to a point where every other fan base, it's hard for them to kind of wrap their head around this. As a Georgia fan, I can resonate with it, right? It was like having Mark Richt almost as a coach. Love Mark Richt to death, but at a certain point, 8, 9, 10 win seasons just weren't going to cut it. Now, Ohio State doesn't have to worry about that, right? Because I think they've got the benefit of the doubt playing in the Big Ten, and their competition every week isn't as stiff, right? I think we could all agree on that. Ohio State fans might disagree with me on that. That's fine, whatever it is. Would you rather play Kentucky or Indiana? I'm just saying. But yeah, I don't know, Chris. I think for me, Ohio State fans, we said it coming into this offseason, if he lost to Michigan, regardless of if they won every other game, I still think that puts him on the hot seat a little bit. People aren't going to want to agree with that. That's fine. But eventually, you're going to want a championship because, I mean, again, next year, like we touched on the broadcast, they're going to go to a 12-team format. Even if he loses this game, then they beat up on a Cincinnati or a Tulane or an at-large school that's number 12, and then they come in and they got to play, Ole Miss or Clemson or whoever. You know what I mean? The second best ACC school in the next round, and they end up getting smoked in that. Well, then what do you do, right? I mean, and that's about where I think Ohio State is right now. I think they're good enough to be second best team in that conference, and then lose in a dramatic fashion in the playoffs. So, I know you asked the question. Well, if they fire Ryan Day or he were to jump ship, who would they get? They could just about get whoever they wanted. I mean, hell, they might even be able to lure Urban Meyer back off, Fox Game Day out there, dude.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, it's just weird, man. Like I said, Ohio State's got to be disappointed. I know how big that rivalry is, what it means to them. They kind of owned it up until a couple years ago. And man, Michigan, like you said it best. They're definitely a better coach team, though. And Harbaugh wasn't even on the sideline. And Harbaugh's not going to be there next year without a doubt. I'm assuming Michigan just fills in this guy. I mean, he's done a pretty good job. I have to admit. I mean, they've beaten Penn State in this run. They beat, I believe, Maryland last week, and then they beat Ohio State. So I will say hats off to Michigan. Yeah, they're in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Florida State surviving the shocker down in the swamp, a scare almost from Florida. The battle of the backups. What did you think about old Taint Roadmaker?
All right. He's no Jordan Travis. I think Jordan Travis, big thing with Jordan Travis is his leadership, right? He's been there forever. I wish he didn't get hurt. We obviously don't wish anybody gets hurt week to week, but Florida State, though, I'm going to say this now. Like I said, I picked them to run the table this year, and they're going to find themselves in the ACC title game here against Louisville. But Florida State, to me, is not a top 5 team. I thought in this game, Florida gave them everything they could handle with a backup quarterback as well. Florida State just don't look very physical to me. They haven't really been playing much inspired football for the last second half of the season, in my opinion. I know it's going to piss off the Florida State fans, and that's okay, but I just don't see it, Christian. I just don't. Even with Jordan Travis the last couple of weeks when he was healthy, playing close games, at this point in the season, man, you got to go out and you got to win with some style. Washington's still right there. I don't know, man. I like I said, I will say hats off to Florida. Whoever that, what's his name? Max Brown? Is that the quarterback, the kid's name? He played pretty well, dude. That kid's a really good athlete. Back there, he's got a dimension with his legs that Graham Mertz didn't. Now, I do think Graham Mertz, they would have had a better shot to win this game if he had been playing, but he was hurt as well. So, Christian, what's your thoughts on it? Like I said, it was a good football game. Probably not hyped up as much as we'd want it to be if both quarterbacks would have been healthy.
Yeah, I think Florida State survived. I mean, listen, Florida State survived. They did exactly what they needed to do. Here's the thing. Couple of bounces, and if they can play really good next week against Louisville, they're probably in the playoffs. Yeah. Not probably, though. They will be in the playoffs, yes. Right? As a undefeated ACC champion, they're doing what they need to do, right? I mean, let's be honest here. Florida's no easy environment, regardless of whether Graham Mertz plays or not. I truthfully, you could make the argument both ways with it here, right? If Graham Mertz played and Jordan Travis obviously was still injured in this hypothetical scenario, Florida probably beats them, right? You could maybe make the argument there a little bit that if, Jordan Travis plays in this game, but Graham Mertz is hurt, Florida State blows them out of the water, right? At the end of the day, I think the better team ended up winning, right? And I think the better coach team ended up winning. Agreed. Right? So, yeah, hats off to Florida State, did what they needed to. The thing with Florida, though, is this is a loss. If there is any kind of moral victories you can take from this is a loss I think you could possibly still have a little bit of signs of growth with, right? If you're Billy Napier or you're the Florida fan.
Yeah, I will say I think this was their 5th straight loss too, for Florida. Yeah. They've lost a lot in a row here. Unfortunately, I know they're banking with Billy Napier. He's been this whole dilemma all season about whether he should be fired or not. I know they're hinging a lot of that recruiting class coming up on him, for next year. Florida's schedule is brutal next year. Mm-hmm. It sucks. They're not going bowling this year again. This is their 3rd straight losing season in a row. I know Florida and Auburn, you said it, are those 2 programs that you can't afford to lose. They don't put up with it there. They have very, very high expectations. Let's be honest, too, and let's throw this out here. Florida has a ton of talent on the roster right now. I mean, this team recruits in the top 5 almost every year. It's got to be disheartening as a Florida fan. I know you can make whatever excuse you want about Graham Mertz not playing, but you did say this, and hats off to Florida State, man. They're undefeated. They did what they needed to do. Wasn't the prettiest game ever. Florida, I believe, was ahead 12-0 in this game at one point. Yeah, it should be a good one against Louisville next week with Florida State and Louisville. I will say that.
Absolutely, I agree. Washington versus Washington State, the Apple Cup, as we were so told coming into this game, it's not ever really that close of a game, but it turned out to come down to a last-second walk-off field goal for Washington to win it, Chris. This was a game I think we both picked Washington to win, a tight game there. As the week kind of went on, I think we wanted to change our minds. We said it on the live show yesterday, probably would lean a little bit more Washington State and taking the upset. They couldn't get it done. Washington, again, we touched on Florida State. Washington did what they needed. They survived, and they've got a date next week with Oregon. What was your thoughts on Washington yesterday?
If you guys didn't catch it, and this is, I put a poll up this morning about the balls on Caleb DeBoer. It was a minute, I think right around a little bit over a minute to go in this game. It was 4th and 2 at his own 25, and they ran or own 30, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact, yard line, but it was tied 21-21. If he doesn't get it, Washington State, all they have to do is kick a field goal and the game's over. And you got to put all this into consideration. Washington's sitting here, they got to make the Pac-12 title game. It's on the line. You lose, you're not making the playoffs. That call, the play call, they had Penix run like a RPO style to the right, and then a reversed. I can't think of his name. They're a really good receiver. He flipped it to him, got like 25 yards, but the play call was nuts. Even the announcers were like, "Are they seriously going for this on their own 30 with a minute left in a tied ball game? All you got to do is punt it if you want to." They didn't, man. That was a ballsy call, but I got hats off to Washington. I know they played some real tight games lately. Like Florida State, they found ways to win. It's not been the prettiest, but also hats off to Washington State this year. They had talk about a tale of two teams, Christian. We touched on them last week. Won 4 or 5 in a row, got ranked, looked really good. Cam Ward looked amazing. Then they lost 5 in a row. Turn around, beat Colorado by 1 million last week, played Washington in just a brutal game. It was a good game to watch. Low scoring yesterday, obviously, but hats off to Washington State, man. I got to give them some credit. They had a pretty good season. I didn't expect that out of them. But, Washington moving on to play Oregon, and holy smokes, that should be a good one next week.
That's going to be a fantastic game next week, Chris. Bama and Auburn. I'll touch on this for a second here. It's very rarely you see Bama get kind of screwed, right? And it's very rarely we come on the show and we talk about, the refs impacting the game. Those refs almost gave Auburn the game, man. I mean, that false start where those 3 guys were running in motion, and right as they were moving, it looked like the Bama guys were coming off, and they called it offsides on Bama. Critical part of the game. You just look at every single thing that kind of happened in this, and it was just like Bama, for whatever reason, they just survived. I mean, they're a team that somebody's looking out from, Chris. I mean, Bama so many times over the years has been put in situations where any other team would lose. I mean, 4th and what was it? 4th and 25 there? 4th and 30? Yeah. I mean, and they complete a Hail Mary there to win it, and they only in Auburn, you touched on it, only rushed two guys. I don't hate it in that situation. Now, you didn't like it, but I don't hate it because Jalen Milroe, if he's going to take off and run, he's going to have to get 30 some odd yards, and chances are they're going to stop him. So you put everybody back there, defend the goal line, whatever have you. But you can't let that happen. I mean, you just can't let that happen if you're Auburn.
Yeah, and I want to add to that play. It didn't bother me so much. If you're gonna rush 2, you better double cover everybody. They left Burton wide. It was a one-on-one route, like a corner route, like a fade route. And I'm like, where's the rest of the defenders for Auburn? He makes a great catch. It was a nice throw by Milroe. It was. I mean, he put it where you only could put it. But I mean, what a way to lose a game. Auburn had that thing. I know people are going to say it's the Iron Bowl, Chris. Anything can happen. Boy, you're not lying. If you're Auburn this morning, that's got to be tough. A tough pill to swallow. They had Bama, man. They gave him everything they wanted in that game. I've harped on Peyton Thorne all year. He ran wild yesterday. Alabama had no answer for him really on the ground. That was a crazy game. That was the craziest game I watched yesterday. That especially the way it came down to the wire. You said it. By the way, the reffing in that whole entire game was complete garbage. I mean, both sides. That's been a theme this year too, as well, Christian.
Well, I think it started off pretty early, right? When they called, they threw an egregious penalty early against Auburn, and then Bama had that long 40-some-odd yard run that they ended up walking back because it was a block at the back or holding, whatever it was. And so, it was just it was a great game, though. I mean, the Iron Bowl was a great game. I think you could make the argument here. Auburn's really, maybe they're not as bad of a team as what we thought. It's just that they got caught looking a couple times, I think, ahead to other opponents, right? And that's something that, Hugh Freeze and a lot of coaches, as they get longer into their tenure, they'll still look ahead, but they'll get better at it and they'll be able to make those in-game adjustments and they won't lose to the New Mexico states of the world. And hopefully they get that done, right? Because that happens again next year. I tell you right now, Hugh Freeze probably won't be on the sideline very long. We know that.
True.
Kentucky, Louisville. This was a game I said going into yesterday. I looked at it a little bit more, and I said I think Kentucky's got a shot to upset Louisville. Everybody thought I was crazy. Kentucky took care of business. I mean, this was the one game Devin Leary decided to come through and play. It looked like for Kentucky and their passing offense. Louisville did not make it easy. Jack Plummer was running down there. I mean, he was making things happen. I mean, he looked good in that game too. They beat Louisville for about a 5-6 hour period after this game. Everybody said Mark Stoops going to Texas A&M. I mean, it was so close. I mean, it basically popped up as reports are saying he's expected to be the next coach. You think, okay, Stoops at A&M, man, that's kind of scary. I woke up this morning. Stoops has said, I'm staying at Kentucky.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know all what went on there, whether he maybe didn't get the salary he wanted. Who knows? But Kentucky, man, a team, this is what I'm talking about. This ACC might be one of the worst conferences in the country, dude. I'm not trying to be mean here when I say this, but from top to bottom, Kentucky's a middle-of-the-road SEC school. Louisville's got to win this one out, man. I'm serious. Like, if you're Louisville, that was a must-win game yesterday. I know they were already in the ACC title game, but they did still have an outside chance to maybe make the playoffs if some crazy shit happened. Now, we know that didn't happen, but you got to win that game at home yesterday, man. But hats off to Kentucky. Kentucky's been kind of a weird team too, right? They started off ultra hot this year. Georgia dismantled them a little bit in the middle of the season. They struggled for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks. Turn around and beat Louisville on the road. So hats off to Kentucky there. Christian called that, by the way.
Arizona versus Arizona State. Chris, Arizona beat the dog shit out of Arizona State in that game. And I made a comment yesterday to you. Arizona, to me, they're playing like a top 10 team, I think. I know that sounds crazy to say out loud, but Arizona versus Texas right now, I mean, who would you lean in that game?
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
That'd be a tough one. Neutral site game. Arizona, you're right. I would probably have to lean Arizona. Arizona looks like one of the better teams in the country. I can't believe I'm saying that, but this is not just a fluke. This isn't just 1-2 weeks in a row. They beat 4 ranked opponents out of their last 6 now, and they're pretty much just destroying people. I mean, It's not even close. Their quarterback, Fita, however you say his last name, holy shit, that kid can throw the ball. I know it was Arizona State yesterday, but he threw for over 540 yards. I mean, it looked like he was just playing 7-on-7 out there.
Oh, yeah. And Arizona State, I think you said it too, Chris, they're not a slouch either. I mean, they played some pretty tough. They're 3 and whatever. Now they're going to be 3 and 9. But I mean, they played some of the best teams in their conference pretty close. I mean, they weren't an easy out at any stretch of this season here. So, records aside there, I mean, I thought Arizona State, they played more like a 5-6 win team this year. In what I thought was a harder conference than what a lot of people will probably give them credit for. Arizona, to me, would be fun to see, in this, if this was next year and we were doing a 12-team playoff, would be fun to see kind of how they would stack up against some other teams. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where their head coach, Jeff Fisk, or Fish, where he lands. Yeah, Fish, where he lands at. So a lot of people are saying, hey, he's going to come back to Arizona. I think with the job he did, honestly, Texas A&M, if God forbid, if some of the dominoes at other programs started falling, like let's just say hypothetically, Ryan Day ended up jumping ship and went to Texas A&M, or Dabo ended up leaving and doing something at that job, whatever have you. I can see a big program giving him a call, right?
His story is, and I said it before, 2 years ago when he took over, they were a 1-11. I mean, that's what he inherited. Turned around, went 5-7, and obviously this year I think they finished their record 9-3, something like that. They've been uber hot. I wouldn't want to play Arizona right now. Whoever's got to touch them in a bowl game. Like I said, their offense is on fire, and they got that Colorado transfer at wideout, man.
Yeah, Lamonius Craig.
Yeah, he's he ain't bad either. So hats off to Arizona this year. Probably one of the biggest surprise teams up there with Missouri this year, I would say.
Oh yeah. LSU, Texas A&M. I mean, the only thing I can say about this game is Jaden Daniels, I think he probably wrapped up the Heisman. He has over 50 touchdowns this year. So hats off to him, man. I mean, he had a fantastic year. A lot of people are arguing, well, they were 9-3, well, blah 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 blah. We've seen other players be 9-3. To me, he was the best part of that offense, hands down. He was their offense, right? And he's the only reason why they won 9 games this year. You take Jaden Daniels out, this team might have been, I don't know, what, they might have been 6-7 wins.
Man, I don't even know if they would have gotten that with some of the performances he put on, Christian, especially in the SEC. Malik Neighbors, by the way, one of the best receivers in the country. He had a catch yesterday, by the way. The corner of the end zone was unreal. He's been real consistent. Those two guys came back, though, for LSU this year. I would say LSU overall, though, with Brian Kelly, kind of a failure this year a little bit, though. I expected them to be a little bit better, 9-3. We talk about their defense a lot on this show, lack thereof. LSU I still think is a good football team. I do. But yes, you talked about Heisman. People are going to say, well, they lost 3 games. Well, Lamar Jackson did it. And I believe it was Robert Griffin III also won a Heisman with Baylor with 3 losses. So I would say Jalen Daniels, especially his legs, dude. Again, I think he had over 150 yards rushing again yesterday. The kid's good, man. And it'll be interesting to see how his game translates to the NFL because he's not a very big dude.
No, he's not. I mean, we've seen smaller guys come in and be able to do okay. If you put an offensive line around him and you give him some weapons, he's got a good shot. Like I said, he's got a decent shot. So we'll kind of touch on this a little bit. Tennessee, they destroyed Vandy at home. Notre Dame and Stanford. Stanford hung around in that game. It was. I mean, the final score, obviously, they beat the dog shit out of them, but it was close for a little bit. Stanford, them going to the ACC, this is interesting to me. They're a team. I think in a couple of years they might do a little something out there.
I will agree with that. I'll add to that Stanford as well. Actually, a lot better team this year. I know their record doesn't show it necessarily than what we thought they were going to be this year. I thought they were probably going to be one of the worst teams in the Power 5. They're definitely not that. They hung around till halftime in this game. They were around. I mean, Notre Dame's got a lot more talent, but like I said, Stanford and ACC. Hell yeah, man. I could see it in a couple of years. They'll be around. They're not going to be the worst team in the ACC. I'll definitely say that.
Oh God, no. They're going to do something. Kind of 2 disappointing performances here yesterday. UNC versus NC State. This was interesting to me, Chris, right? Because I kind of flipped into this game, I think, at one point, and I saw, depending on what you were looking at, NC State was ranked, right?
Do you believe that they're 9-3?
It's kind of hard because they kind of get washed around there. Everybody talks about Florida State and Louisville, being at the top there. And then obviously you look at, who was it? Clemson, right? Everyone's talking about Clemson. But yeah, it's kind of hard to believe NC State's sitting there, 3rd in the conference?
Yeah, 9-3, dude, this year. I did not see that. You touched on it. Yeah, North Carolina, what the hell happened to them? I mean,
they're, yeah.
Drake
now they
May?
did. I was going to say, now they played their younger guy in that game, right? Was it Williams? Is that?
Did May not play? I did not catch this game, so maybe you're
I believe when I looked at it, let's take a look here just to make sure, just to humor me a little bit.
You're probably right. Judging they only put up 20 points. I mean, that's pretty sad. I just can't believe though that NC State, man, 9-3 team. It's impressive this year.
It looks like, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it looks like Drake May did play in this game. I don't know why my stats aren't loading here.
Yeah, he did. 22 of 38, 250, 2 touchdowns, 2 INTs, but only 20 points. That's not going to get it done. He got outplayed by that, what's his name, Brandon Armstrong, the kid from NC State. So,
yeah, I think when I did look at it, though, I mean, again, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I know Williams was in the game for him here. Let me just see this real quick, and we'll get back onto it. I just want to see what he did. He's going to be their future. I mean, I watched him play a little bit when they were playing. Who was it? Campbell. He looked pretty good, I thought. Oh, wow.
Mac Brown's known for offense, though, man. I mean, he's always has good offense teams. Too bad the defense. He kind of reminds me of Lincoln Riley anymore. You know what I mean? I mean, there's no doubt North Carolina's got a ton of wide receivers that are uber talented as well, but you got to play a little bit of defense on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, you do. Iowa State and Kansas State. The Kansas schools can't really count on them.
Not this
from
one.
time to time.
God.
I mean, more Big 12 stuff happening, really. So, hey, listen, hats off to Iowa State. I mean, they're a team, when you look at their roster, they had a freshman quarterback that they were playing this year because of the whole betting thing and all that. We knew Iowa State was going to have a good defense. Their offense we thought was probably going to be one of the worst in the Power Five. But Chris, I mean, hats off to Iowa State, man, to kind of rebound and have a pretty damn good season by their standards.
Yeah, I bet K-State yesterday, and boy, I look like a fool. I should have listened to you before the show. Iowa State, man, 7-5 this year. That's pretty good for a team that doesn't have a ton of talent. This wasn't supposed to be their year. Still, to get 7 wins, a lot of teams can't say that. So, big win over K-State. K-State, I thought, was one of the better teams in the Big 12. Thus, again, shitting the bed when I bet on them.
Oh yeah, keeping the Big 12 theme alive here. It's 2 overtimes it took for Oklahoma State to beat BYU. I wouldn't say controversial the way that game ended. With the guy fumbling the ball there, but Oklahoma State survives. They got a date next week with Texas. This is going to be pretty interesting, right? Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat Texas. We're going to play the what-if game all the way up until this game kicks off, I got a feeling. It is the Big 12, and you never know what's going to happen. But what were your thoughts on this one?
BYU's been a weird team this year. They'll play with some teams when you least expect it. Oklahoma State said the same thing about. I mean, a couple weeks ago, they got blown out by Central Florida by like 50. But turn around, beat BYU. They won last week. Oklahoma State did what they needed to. You say that word a lot on this channel, but yeah, they did. They're I can't believe it, but Oklahoma State, they're in the Big 12 title game. It seems like every year there's 2 new teams playing for that conference championship.
Well, I think when the season started, especially, I mean, Oklahoma State, they lost to like a FCS school, didn't they?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Horrible.
And it was, oh my God, they're going to get railroaded by everybody once they get in Big 12 play. I mean, we thought they're going to probably be one of the worst teams in the Big 12. And, man, everyone's favorite aunt, Mike Gundy, just out here doing what he needs to do, man. Looked like the Brokeback Cowboy, as we like to call him. Yeah. That mullet was rocking, and he's got Oklahoma State believing. It'll be interesting to see what we end up picking in that game when they play Texas this next week. Utah and Colorado.
A lot closer than what I expected. I didn't watch this game. I don't think it was televised over here where I'm at, but Colorado 4-win season. Colorado fans, you guys can apologize in the comment section below for telling me that they were going to win 9 or 10 games this year. Colorado, again, is not a very good school. They will fit in well next year in the Big 12, though.
Yes, they will. A game in which Shedeur Sanders did not play. Chris, here's the thing. Colorado is a wide team as more as they are a deep team, as somebody once said about this podcast. That's okay. We revel in it. It is what it is. Colorado, I think next year, they're going to fit in a lot. You said it best, Chris. They're going to fit in better in the Big 12. I think Deion's going to get some more of his guys in there. He's going to go attack the transfer portal. He's going to keep a lot of the core pieces there. They're going to get better depth. They're going to be in a better spot next year. And the thing about Colorado, I think, is maybe for the next couple of years, they're going to be a team that you don't want to play them early in the season. Probably. You're going to want to probably try to play them when they're a little more banged up later in the season. They can, because if they get any kind of momentum, good luck.
Yeah, they should be decent next year. Shedeur Sanders, I believe, is coming back. Travis Hunter, they're going to be better. I mean, they're going to obviously have to get some offensive, defensive linemen. Biggest thing with Colorado, you said injuries. They have no depth. It just kills them. And you guys know how it is at this time of the season, end of the year here. Everybody's banged up. Colorado they're playing a bunch of 2-stars out there. Guys transfers from other schools that couldn't make it. I hate to say that, but it's true. I mean, it shows. They just haven't had any defense this year, although they did play Utah relatively close yesterday. Colorado, though, next year, Nebraska plays them early. They got a couple games where it's going to be a little scary playing them early in the season. So Christian's right about that one.
Damn right. Kansas beat Cincinnati. They're going to stay inside the top 25. It looks like here they beat the dog shit out of Cincinnati. They're 49-16. We look at some other games here, not super important. You picked Indiana, by the way. I picked Purdue yesterday in the battle for one of the worst teams in the Big 12 or the Big 10. Sorry.
By the way, Christian, if you don't mind me adding, they did fire Tom Allen this morning. From Indiana, he just got canned. So,
well, I don't know. That's the thing. I mean, it'll be interesting to see who Indiana goes out and gets. Be very interesting to see who they go out and get. I mean, it's a basketball school that plays football on Saturdays. That's about what I can equate it to. They've got a good defense, assuming they can keep everybody in-house. I don't know. You know what I mean? The only thing I can really relate it to is the best case scenario for an Indiana is you go out and you get somebody like a Mark Stoops.
Yeah, with Mark Stoops, though, you think he would take a step back and go to Indiana? I mean, he's done a lot with Kentucky.
No. I don't mean Mark Stoops not going to leave Kentucky. I don't think. But what I'm saying is somebody like a Mark Stoops.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
Like a Jeff Lebby or somebody like that. But I don't think Lebby would go there. I think you'd have to get like a Michigan or an Ohio State coordinator or somebody like that. Like a Brian Hartline or somebody. One of those.
Tony White over at Nebraska.
Hey, that would probably bode pretty well. The biggest thing is you'd want to obviously see that offense take some steps forward. Yeah. They looked better as the season went on there, but you want to see them start off, I think, and do that and continue to play defense. They also gave up 35 points here to Purdue, and Purdue at points can be okay on offense.
Hudson Card is so up and down, man. I've watched him play a ton this year. He's not a bad quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He's really nimble, but yesterday he ran all over Indiana. But he's so up and down, though. I've watched him play enough. He not a bad quarterback Big Ten wise, but you're right though, Christian, about Indiana. They did play a lot better the second half of the season. I will say that they did. They looked a lot better. I mean, to start the season, they looked like they weren't going to win a football game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they looked rough. So looking ahead here, just kind of seeing here, Northwestern beat Illinois, in a close one there, 45-43 on the road. Braun, the defensive coordinator who took over, obviously, for why am I struggling with the coach's name that got fired? Pat Fitzgerald. Took over for Pat Fitzgerald there. Great job, dude. Great job for Braun.
7 wins this year for Northwestern, a team that won 1 game last year without their head coach.
Jeez.
It's crazy.
Yeah, hats off to Northwestern there. Wisconsin put the claws on Minnesota there. Did exactly what they needed to do to finish off a season. That's 7 wins for them now?
Yes, they're 7-5. Minnesota not bowl eligible like Nebraska with the 5-7 record.
Hats off to Wisconsin. Luke Fickell, kind of an up and down year, but it's a building year for them. They'll get better and they'll kind of go from there, I think. Mordecai, if I wasn't mistaken, this was his last year.
That's a good question. I can take a look here, but I am not 100% sure whether or not he is. Let me take a look here. I'm pulling it up. Christian, he is a senior this year.
Yeah, and they were able to get, let me just take a look at this. I'm drawing a blank on the names. Obviously, there's 130 programs, and it's not always easy.
Yeah, isn't it Locke is his backup? That he played a little bit this year. He didn't look terrible.
No, he didn't look terrible. Braden Locke. Yep. That's exactly what I'm saying. Braden Locke. He started, I think it was good they got him some experience, down the stretch there.
Yeah.
Dare I say, hey, I know it sounds crazy. I'd almost would have started Braden Locke the rest of the way. I know they got Mordecai back in there. I don't know if Mordecai would have beaten, or I don't know, sorry, if Braden Locke would have beaten Nebraska or beaten Minnesota, arguably. But
I think the reason why they played him is because before the Nebraska game, they were stuck at 5 wins. I think they probably, with Luke Fickell's first year, you obviously want to make a bowl game, I think. And,
sure.
You got to take probably the veteran in that one. I mean, Mordecai did play really well against Nebraska. I didn't get to watch this game yesterday. I do know it was tied 14-14 at halftime, but Wisconsin does what Wisconsin does. They put the clamps on them on defense and pulled off the W. I will say I'm going to call this right now while we're talking about Minnesota. I think PJ Fleck is out of there.
Really?
Here in a week. I do. There was a lot of talk before the season started with some shady stuff that was going on. I don't know maybe you don't follow Minnesota as much as I do since I'm a Big Ten guy, but he's a strange dude. I know they've won. They've won I think it was 8. They had 3 8-win seasons in a row up until obviously this season. But I think he's kind of ran his course over there. It would not surprise me to hear his name on the chopping block within the next few days.
Well, I know because I've watched a lot of the Big Ten media days and stuff, and every time he talks, you look at the comments, and they always talk about, hey, he's a weird dude. He's a weird guy, Minnesota, obviously, ironically, you touch on them. I mean, they were a powerhouse back in the day. What was it, the 60s? They won back-to-back national titles or something like that? early to mid
going back even
1900s.
further. Yeah, they were going back a long time. I think they're the last team to never win 3 in a row.
Yeah. So, Minnesota, one of those weird, surprising teams, I feel like that they have expectations, for their football program up in Minnesota. And they're rabid fans, dude. I mean, they're the kind of people that'll go in a blizzard and go shirtless.
Yeah,
To watch the Gophers play or the Vikings, even though they're indoors, whatever have you. It wouldn't shock me, right? And PJ Fleck, another one of those coaches who's kind of like Pat Fitzgerald, you know what I mean? Real up, real down. They always, whenever you think you can count on them to do something, they always do really well. And whenever you think, they won't do jack shit, they always do something pretty good. So, it'd be interesting to see what Minnesota does going forward. Maryland beat the brakes off of Rutgers in that game.
Yeah, Maryland, Rutgers, both two surprise teams, though. Both bowl eligible this year again. So I think Maryland's got 7 wins. Rutgers stuck at 6 or 7. They might have 7 too. I don't think anybody saw Greg Schiano's Rutgers team probably winning 7 games this year. I know I didn't. So I gotta throw some love over to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Another team from the Big Ten I didn't think was going to be good this year. 7 wins, not bad. We'll take it.
I think there's a difference. There's a changing of the guard here. I think Rutgers is. Like you said, with Greg Schiano and Maryland with Mike Loxley, I think they're 2 stable programs. Now, they may not win all the games they're supposed to win. They might have some disappointing performances. I think overall, they're going to win 6-7 games a year.
Yeah, no, and they look like it. I'll be honest with you. I mean, everybody knows I'm a Husker fan. I'm not going to talk about them much, but those 2 teams are better than the Huskers are. They are. They're more stable going forward. I will say that. I mean, if you guys watch Maryland play, they do lose a lot of seniors after this year. And I think Maryland would probably tell you they had a down year. I mean, we talked about them before the season started, Christian. We thought maybe they could knock off a Penn State or a Michigan this year, Ohio State. They played a couple of those games, those 2 teams really tough, 2 out of those 3. But hats off to Maryland and Rutgers. Like I said, bowl eligible. Like I said, I got to root for my Big Ten a little bit. You guys got to remember Christians over in the SEC. They just kick everybody's ass every year. I got to try to prop up the Big Ten when I can.
Right. Switching gears here a little bit, West Virginia, Baylor, Neil Brown, I think doing a hell of a job there to kind of finish the season off strong for him, even though it's not over yet because they're going to go to a bowl. But West Virginia, Baylor, that was a close one.
Yeah, that was a really close game. I didn't get to watch it, I didn't catch it, but I was watching the score. That game was pretty close for most of the 4 quarters there. You said it though. I think, if I'm not mistaken, West Virginia won 7 games this year, right? I know the over win total this year was like at 3. So they far exceeded the expectations, I would say, at West Virginia.
8-4.
Holy shit. Okay. 8-4.
8-4.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. And that's the thing too. To me, that's what's so crazy about 8-4, but they were a couple plays away from being 9-3.
Yeah.
One play in particular.
Against Houston, right? You're talking about that Thursday night or Friday night game a couple weeks ago. God, that was crazy.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
But and that's kind of the thing here too. I mean, I will have to take a look and see what their schedule is next year. Actually, you know what? I'm curious here.
Well, they're in the Big 12. Anything can happen there.
Yeah, I want to keep it parked for just a second, then we'll kind of move on here. I want to see who they play next year and see, because we've touched on it. I mean, it'd be probably pretty easy to say Jimbo Fisher, right? He's a West Virginia guy, but I don't know. I think oh God. Let's see.
Who they got?
Start the year off at Penn State.
Yikes. I know they played them this year too.
Yeah. Then they play Albany, at Pitt, at Arizona, at Cincinnati, at Oklahoma State, at Texas Tech, Baylor, Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State, UCF. Okay. So, yeah. I mean, just on the offset, we don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. We'll probably end up making some picks there. Not as easy of a schedule as you'd like to think, but we'll see. I mean, you never know. Neil Brown, if they can get their quarterback Green back, I mean, they got some chances there next year, dude.
Oh yeah.
Clemson versus South Carolina was a interesting game.
I did not watch this. I did bet on it. I did take Clemson in the points, but and they barely covered. But Clemson, I think they win the last 4 games in a row. They look a lot better than they did the first half of the season. I will say that. It's pretty obvious. Christian, thoughts? Dabo, staying, going? What do you think?
I don't know. Nothing shocks me with Dabo and this Clemson program anymore. I mean, they're 8-4. You know, for Clemson, that's kind of. I mean, to me, that for Clemson to be 8-4, that's like Bama going, 10-2.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it just such a weird way to look at it here. South Carolina, they're not a very good program.
No, they're not.
And if you're thinking, okay, Clemson should be, knowing what Clemson's been in the past, I mean, this is a game that you'd want to win 30-something to 7. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Not 16-7. I know it was rivalry week. A lot of things happened. I can be critical, of Clemson and South Carolina here at the same time. I just think for Clemson and Dabo, I don't know, man. It wouldn't shock me if Dabo jumped ship and went over to Texas A&M, mainly because, what happens next year with Garrett Riley in this offense?
It's got to get better. I mean, Kate Klubnik is not the answer, though. I will say that for a kid who was a 5-star, and they put a lot of stock into him since he was in high school. I'm not impressed with that kid at all. I don't know. You said it, Garrett Riley. I mean, would you promote him to head coach? I don't know, but
I mean, listen. Here's the thing about Clemson, right? And this is one thing I will say. Dabo's going to ride this whole we're not dipping into the NIL or the transfer portal thing to the ground. In that regard, if you went out and you got somebody like, again, if you promoted somebody like Garrett Riley up there, I mean, you think about what Clemson's needing right now. To me, I mean, shit, they can run the football really well. They're good on both lines of scrimmage, offensive and defensive lines. They need burners, dude.
Yep.
They need burners at the wide receiver position. I think that's probably been one of the biggest things holding them back in this offense is they don't have anybody that's really creating separation. Now, I know some rabid Clemson fan will sit there and tell me, well, but they've got this guy that runs a 4.2 40, and it's like, look, I don't give a shit because obviously he's not playing and he's not making any, he's not doing anything.
Right, but where's the Mike Williamses, the DeAndre Hopkins, the Justin Rosses, Hunter Renfro? Where are these guys? It's funny for Clemson because when they were winning titles, their wide receiver group was the best in the country year in year out.
My God,
now they got nobody. I can't name a single wide receiver for Clemson. Christian?
No, I mean, shit. Their best oh my God, their running backs had. Oh, sorry, hold on one second. I mean, they've got Brown and Collins both had 500 yards.
No, it's not enough.
You know what I mean? And then the tight end, Brenningstool, had 400 yards here. Everybody else, I mean, they looked okay, but I mean, shit, Kate Klubnik had 2,500 yards.
Yeah. I just don't. I don't get it, man. Because like I said, by the way, I forgot to throw into that list T. Higgins, Sammy Watkins. I mean, where are these guys? Like that's Clemson's just had a slew of great receivers. I don't understand. If you're Clemson, I'm with you there on that, 100%.
I think the thing is, and this is just where I look at it, right? Because a lot of people can say, well, look at Georgia. Who's Georgia got that has 1,000 yards this year? Well, you got to look at Brock Bowers. I mean, Brock Bowers, he doesn't have 1,000 yards, but I mean, when he plays, the guy is what, easily gets 100-something yards and a tutty?
That and you guys spread the ball to, you guys are like the Chiefs on offense. Yeah. Because you got like 12 guys getting receptions during game. Clemson doesn't run that style of offense. And part of it is, too, I mean, Carson Beck is 10 times better than Kate Klubnik. Yeah, I said it, 10 times better.
Yeah, I listen, I'm not giving up hope yet on Klubnik the same way I didn't want to give up hope on the ukulele. Yeah. I think it's more of just a little tweaks there, right? You go out, if you're if you're Nebraska, and I'm just going to put it this way, if you're Nebraska or Iowa, it's a little bit harder to get somebody that comes in that can run 4.3 and be precise with route running and develop those guys into who they need to be. If you're Clemson, it shouldn't be that freaking difficult.
No.
There's probably 10,000 kids within 2 hours of your campus that can run a sub 4.5 40 that you could probably make 2 or 3 tweaks and end up being the next Renfro, Williams, Hopkins, whoever.
Right. No, I agree.
So, yeah. Cal, UCLA, Chris, very weird game there, considering the fact it was at UCLA. UCLA and Chip Kelly beat USC pretty handedly the week prior. they're going into that USC game, all the thoughts were on Chip Kelly losing his job. It was just a matter of time. He beats USC. Everybody comes out, sings Kumbaya, says we weren't going to fire him. Da, 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 da. A week later, they get the doors blown off by Cal, who was not a barn burner over there by any stretch of the imagination.
No, pretty pissed off. I bet on UCLA to win yesterday. I couldn't believe it when I saw the score. Now, I didn't stay up super late to watch the end of it, but I was like sweating it out for a half, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on with UCLA. I mean, do they fire him now? I mean, is that it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think Chip Kelly's a guy that you'd have to go out and get if he's out on the market, if you're a majority of college football programs needing a coach this season, off season.
I don't know if they fire him. I would think Chip Kelly, to me, he's a guy that's like a scorned lover, if I could say that, dude. I mean, he's the kind of person that's like, oh, you want to break up? Okay, all right. Well, we can stay to, you wanted to break up a couple years ago? Okay, not a big deal. And then one day you show up and his shit's gone and he's got a picture of him with some supermodel and he's like, fuck you, bitch. You know what I mean? That's Chip Kelly. Like, Chip Kelly would be the guy that would, like a thief in the night, jump ship and go to Texas A&M or go to Clemson or go somewhere like that, right? If the call was made to him. I mean, and go ahead.
Would you add, though, that, I mean, he's done a great job at UCLA in his tenure there.
Oh, yeah, hands down. Yeah. He like you said, though, Chris, he just doesn't want to play the games. He doesn't want to have to go and do like the Dabo and go stroke the boosters and show up and do radio shows. He just wants to coach ball, dude. Like, that's what he wants to do. He just wants to coach football. He doesn't give a shit about the women's volleyball team or the men's basketball team because they don't care about their football team. He just wants to show up, coach football, and do what he wants to do. And win, lose, or draw, love him or hate him, he's done a hell of a job at UCLA.
No, he has. I mean, their defense is pretty legit. I think they're going to fit just fine into the Big Ten next year. I do. I really do. Yeah. I don't think UCLA is going to be getting pushed over by a bunch of these Big Ten West teams. I'll say that right away. He's always been a great recruiter. We know his time at Oregon when he was there. He's done a good job at UCLA so far recruiting kids. I think UCLA is going to be tough. I really do in the Big Ten.
Absolutely, Chris. I agree with you. Just looking back a little bit here, Ole Miss, Mississippi State won some money there for the Ole Miss part of it. Hats off to Ole Miss. We'll kind of just retouch on this again. The Friday games, Oregon State. Oregon thrashed them. Jonathan Smith, since has taken the job out there at Michigan State. Love it, hate it. What do you think?
Like it. I think he's a good coach. He's done a lot at Oregon State. They're a tough out. No matter who the hell they're playing week in and week out, especially with the Pac-12 schedule this year and a lot of those tough teams there. He'll fit just fine at Michigan State. I think he'll kind of revamp that program a little bit because Michigan State is one of those teams. I know they're big on their basketball, but they're big on their football too there. Man, most of my lifetime, Michigan State's always been a very physical, tough team. Great running backs, great defense. So I see him doing the same thing. Great fit. I think that's a perfect marriage right there. I really do.
Do you think he kind of is more in that mold of like a James Franklin at Penn State, where he can get them to maybe the third or fourth best team in the Big Ten, maybe make a little bit of a push in the playoffs in the given year, something like that. Maybe not good enough to maybe beat an Ohio State or Michigan, but maybe make them sweat.
Yeah, no, I do. And I mean, if you ever watch like Michigan State-Michigan rivalry is huge. Like those two teams obviously hate each other. Michigan State, man, I got a few friends that are Michigan State friends or fans, and they say, man, like they need to get back to playing real football over there. It's been a struggle up and down for the last 5 years at Michigan State for the most part, outside of the year with Kenneth Walker. I'm telling you, man, I think this is a great fit. I really do. I mean, he's not gonna go in there and throw the ball 60 times a game, and that's not what Michigan State wants to do. They want to ground and pound. They want to play defense, and you made a perfect comparison. Get to where James Franklin's at, winning 9-10 games a year, making the Michigan, Ohio State sweat a little bit, and we'll see what happens. Like I said, I think that's a huge hire for Michigan State. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, they went from having, kind of ironically, they had the Mark Rich at the Big Ten there for a while, and Mark D'Antonio, guy that was coached how many teams to how many, conference championship games, did exactly what he needed to do at Michigan State, was the staple of success. Obviously, he leaves. They try to bring in a splash in Mel Tucker. Didn't work out, you know what I mean? I think they realized going into this season, we're paying him a shit ton of money. The product's probably not going to be there in a couple years. They made a hard decision. the alleged allegations kind of happened. You know, whatever you want to believe in that, believe in or don't believe in it. But yeah, now Jonathan Smith's going to be the guy I think that's going to be, you know, tasked to kind of raise that program. Let's hope he's more D'Antonio or Franklin than he is Riley at Nebraska for their sake, right?
Exactly. I 100% agree with you.
Texas, you know, we'll just kind of summarize this real quick. Texas, Mizzou, Penn State all thrashed their rivals there this week. So hats off to them doing what they need to do, all top 12 teams there. Oklahoma, same thing. Biggest difference here, if you're Oklahoma, they're not getting into the playoffs now. Probably weren't getting in prior to that, but they might have had a little bit of a shot to make a run, I think, if they could have gotten into the Big 12 game, beat Texas again, and, did that. But
yeah, that the game against Oklahoma State killed them. The Bedlam game. That one hurt. That one hurt.
The biggest thing is 45 points to TCU. That really hurts, right? Because obviously they put up 69, but you're not going to win very many games in the SEC like that, right?
No. Only in the Big 12 that shit'll work.
Unless you're playing like LSU or Ole Miss.
Or USC out in the Pac-12, yeah.
Oh, man. I still would like Ole Miss or LSU, even against Oklahoma in those games, right?
Would agree.
Especially early on. Iowa, Nebraska. This will be one of the last games we touch on here. Obviously, you've had a couple days to digest this. Yeah, I mean, just two anemic offenses with two, I would say, above average defenses out there. Pretty damn good defenses. I don't know, Chris. I mean, for me, we're just looking at it here. Nebraska's got a long way to go. So does Iowa. I mean, because what's the consolation prize of winning the Big Ten West?
Yeah, getting your goddamn ass kicked by Michigan next week. I'm glad Nebraska doesn't have to get that embarrassment again, because we already played Michigan and got mollywopped by them a couple months ago. But yeah, honestly, it's been a couple days, Christian, for my Nebraska Huskers, and I feel the same way I did 2 days ago. This offseason will be huge for Matt Rule, especially going forward. We need to go get some players. We need to recruit well. I know every coach wants to do that, and every team is going to say that. I know it sounds super generic, but it rides on Matt Rule's future at Nebraska this offseason. I'll keep a part right there.
I'll say this. We looked at a Nebraska schedule next year. I just want to read you off Iowa's schedule next year. Oh, boy. So they start the year off Illinois State. Then they play Iowa State. We know Iowa State's going to be better. I can almost guarantee that. Yeah, Matt Campbell, they're going to be better on offense this year. We'll touch on it as the offseason goes and we figure out what kind of happens there. They play Troy, then they play at Minnesota, then they got their bye week. They play at Ohio State. This is where it gets real interesting. At Ohio State, Washington, at Michigan State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, at UCLA, at Maryland, and then Nebraska to finish the year off.
Yeah, without the Big Ten West and the conferences being gone, these Big Ten West teams now are going to have to play the big boys, and the big boys coming over from the Pac-12. It's going to get a lot harder. I'm not joking when I say this, because I got to be honest with you, Christian. I'm not laughing when I say like teams like Nebraska, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan State. I don't want to say them necessarily with the new coach, but they're not careful. If they're not careful in the next couple of years, they will be playing on Tuesday nights with the MAC. So because nobody's going to want to watch them, because the Big Ten just got exponentially tougher next year and going forward with the 4 teams coming over.
Well, Chris, you guys have 8 years left on the TV deal?
Something like that, yeah.
Is it possible? Now, is it possible? We see all this conference realignment stuff, but is it possible that in the next couple of years, the Big Ten decides to kick some teams out and reshuffle, maybe add some more teams?
I think anything's a possibility, because I don't know what the hell's all going on. To me, it still looks like they want the SEC to be this power conference, as we talked about, and the Big Ten, kind of like the NFL with the AFC and the NFC. Mm-hmm. But there are some teams in the Big Ten that need to get their shit together, because let's be honest, from top to bottom, the SEC is just exponentially better, right? I mean, the Kentuckys of the world, hell, I'll throw Auburn in there. Some of those teams, they would beat the piss out of 90% of the Big Ten West teams. They would. I'm not trying to piss anybody off, but it's true. Nebraska, Illinois, Minnesota, Purdue. Wisconsin, I think, is going to definitely get better going forward. I could say on the other side, Michigan State will definitely be getting better over there as well. But yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with this conference. It's all about money at the end of the day. And the Big Ten, I will say they scored with UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington coming over, though. Those are 4 good teams. By the way, it's not just all football either. It's the other sports. Those 4 schools' volleyball programs are all good. Some of their basketball programs are really good. Nebraska, what do they really bring to the table as a university as far as this goes? Their volleyball team's obviously legit, but the basketball program's not. The football program isn't very good. At the end of the day, I could see them being like, well, we need to kick some teams out. What's Nebraska? What do you guys bring to the table? Now, this will be years down the road, but we've been saying that about Nebraska for years now. If you would ask me 10 years ago, hey, Chris, what do you think Nebraska is going to be in 2023? Oh, they're going to be better than 4 or 5 wins. Well, I'm still sitting here with 4 or 5 wins, Christian.
Well, I think it's a little bit relatively different, compared to like the SEC, right? Like the SEC, yeah, you got Vanderbilt, you got South Carolina, but I mean, you put Vandy, you put Vandy in the Big Ten West, or you put South Carolina, in the ACC. I mean, who knows? Who knows what happens? I'm not saying they're going to win the conference, right, or anything crazy like that, but they would probably be very middle of the pack teams, if not better teams. I would feel as if, right?
I would agree.
Hell, even Kentucky just beat the second best team, maybe even the best team in the ACC this year. Yep. Now, Florida State, we all know what that is, but if Louisville ends up winning this next week, they'll be the best team in the ACC.
Yeah, no,
on paper,
it's true, though, man. That's what's scary about the Big Ten and some of the schools that it has.
So, but yeah, Chris, I mean, listen, I think this is a pretty good place to kind of wrap it up here on the Week 13 recap show here. It was a fun rivalry week.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get back tomorrow. We're going to do our live show, obviously, to look ahead at conference championship week, Chris. I mean, the season draws on yet. You got me by 1 game. You texted me yesterday. You said, I beat you. And I was like, hey, the season's still going, man. We still got bowl season, conference championships. We've got the playoffs. So it's going to be exciting, Chris.
Yeah, no, I agree, Christian. Like I said, it should be fun. Conference championship week this week, guys, should be awesome. There's a lot of good matchups. A couple of them we've wanted to see all year. One of them we already saw. We wanted a rematch. We're getting that in the Pac-12. Obviously, we get the big one for Christian's Dogs against Bama, the last team to beat them. I think you guys have won, 29 in a row, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
If we can get to 30, we got a shot.
Woo. By the way, guys, thanks for all the support. If you watch us, please like, comment, subscribe. We are 1 sub away from 500, by the way. Thanks to you guys for that. So we appreciate that.